We're going to talk about general rules. We'll start with all this fun stuff, okay? Things you got to know, yeah? Your font, you always want it to be legible and consistent. A lot of APA papers prefer Times New Roman. You probably have heard this a million times in your lives. So Times New Roman, a fun font to have. You also want it to be 12 point, yeah? Not 13, 11, 12. 12 is your sweet spot. Your paper will be double spaced, so you don't want to hit the enter button twice at the end of a paragraph. That's not the double space we mean, okay? And I'll show you a picture in a minute or two. So you want it to be double spaced every time. And then you want your page margins to be set at 1 inch. That's the default in Google Docs. If you are using Google Docs to write, it is also the default in Word, if you prefer Word to write. Okay, so as long as you don't touch the margins, you're good to go. You also want the pages to be numbered in the top right corner in the header. Again, in a minute, I will show you what that looks like. That always sits in the top right corner up here. And there are generally 4 main sections of an APA paper. Your title page, your abstract, your main body, so like the real text of your paper, and your references page, which is everybody's favorite. So, header, this is what I was talking about when I was talking about that page number in the top right-hand side. APA has 2 different kinds of papers, student and professional. Student papers are really what you're expected to write. But I will tell you that occasionally a professor may say, hey, I want that title in your header too. And then you can be like, oh, I do vaguely remember somebody somewhere telling me that how to do that, okay? So student papers just have this page number in the top right-hand corner. You do this by going to Insert, Add Page Number. If you type it in manually, you'll just get the same repeating number over and over again, right? So if you let the computer do it for you, better. If you have a professional paper or your professor says, hey, can you add that title in your header? Your title will go on your left-hand side. So page number on the right, title on the left. And the title goes in all capital letters. This is sometimes called a running head. So if your professor also says, hey, can you put a running head on your paper? Same deal. Normally you'll put the full title unless it's super, super long. If it's super, super long, you'll put a shortened version. So you have a nice long title about how this certain theory, blah, 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 right? You might just shorten it to theory of something. So usually a shortened version, all caps. That's the big important part. Always goes all caps. So let's talk about the title page. So your title page, title of your paper, obviously the most important, right? It goes right in the middle and it's nice and bold. It's also centered, right? It's not to the left, not to the right, just in the center. And then this is the only time you'll ever hear me say this. You're going to add an extra space. Okay, this is when you hit enter twice. And you hit enter twice between the title and your name. So it goes your name, your department, right? The university. So if any of you are in the psych department or taking a class in the psych department, you would say Department of Psychology, Eastern University. And then this is where you put your actual course name, okay? So you might put Psych 100 and then the actual title of your class. So if you were in an English 102 class, you would say English 102 college writing. So number and then name. Next line is your professor's name. Usually doctor. If you're unsure, put professor. Professor is always okay. And then you put the due date down at the bottom. Okay? Very important. Don't put the date you're writing. Put the date that it's due. Even if you submit it a week before. Keep going. So now that you've done your title page, a professor may ask for an abstract. Not every paper you write in APA format will have an abstract, but some probably will. It gets you used to writing in APA format, especially if any of you go on further. Yeah? Professional papers almost always have an abstract. So this picture's slightly blurry up here. So following the title page, next page, you put abstract in the center and in bold, very top of the page. It is the same font and size as everything else. It just gets bolded to let us know, hey, this is the abstract. On the next line, so you hit enter once, singular time. You write a summary of the paper's key points. It is only one paragraph and it has no indents. This is the only time you will not indent a paragraph. So next line, nice little summary, no paragraph indentation. And then after that paragraph, you'll include the wonderful keywords. These keywords, as you can see, keyword is italicized and that is indented. Okay, and then you'll put the keywords down here at the bottom. So that's the format. This is kind of what it looks like. Bold and centered, paragraph normal, just not indented, and then your keywords do get indented. So then in the main body of your paper. So this will be the same for every single APA paper you write, all right? 3 main parts: title, paragraphs, sections. So after your abstract, next page goes your title once again, okay? So you will repeat the same title you put on that title page. That gets bolded and centered, same deal. Very first line, and then come all your paragraphs. Each paragraph will be indented. You don't include like the title of introduction before your introduction. Your title of your paper kind of serves as like an indicator of, hey, this next part is my introduction. And then I'm going to dive into the rest of my paper. Okay? And then sections, which I'll talk about in a moment. This down here is what your first paragraph should look like. Very first page, okay? Bolded, title of your essay. It has this headline style font, not font, type, right? So title is capitalized, of is not. Your and essay are capitalized, right? So this is what we call headline style capitalization. It means like the tiny words like of and a and an don't get capitalized unless they're first. And then the next paragraph, right? You hit enter once, not twice, just once. And then you hit tab once, and then you start writing. Okay, so this is what double spaced looks like. There's not too many spaces in between. Line spacing doesn't get wonky. Sometimes if it looks bigger than this, it's because your page has defaulted to having an extra space before and after a line. Super easy to turn off if you need to. Okay? All right, so this is what your paper looks like. And then we talk about sections. Okay? So if you're writing a big long paper or a research paper that might be shorter, but your professor's like, please use sections. And you're sitting there like, I don't know what sections are. I've never heard of those in my life. This is what your professor is talking about, okay? So section titles and subsections act as like separators in your paper to be like, hey, I'm going to talk about this thing. And then, oh, hey, I'm going to pick apart that one little niche thing that I was just talking about. Yeah, I'm going to dive further into that. So again, most papers don't need sectioning. If you're writing a big long one, your professor might ask for it. And I'm going to show you what it looks like. So this is our nice little subsection guide, okay? This is not something you have to memorize. You will probably only, in your undergraduate life, use maybe the first 3. You probably won't use further than that unless you're writing a big old thesis or dissertation or something big, okay? The first 3 is probably the max you'll use in undergrad. You might not even use the 3rd one. So let's say we were writing a paper about, I don't know, genes. Yeah? We might have our whole nice little introduction, and then we're going to just talk about the general topic of genes. Yeah? Genes would be centered, boldface with title case heading. Looks exactly the same as your title. Exactly the same. It's just indicating a separation in your paper. All right? So then blah, 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 we talk about genes, we talk about, I don't know, when they were created, all that kind of stuff. And then let's say we wanted to dive into a niche topic. We wanted to talk specifically about, I don't know, how denim is made. That might be our level 2 here. And that is the whole way to the left, no indentation, okay? Sits at that margin, bold, with that same title heading, okay? That same title case heading. So then that might be how denim is made. And that would be our level 2. So then we would know that whole section is just talking about the process of denim being made. If we were to do an even further subsection of that, we might talk about how denim is produced in the United States of America. Maybe it's totally different. Yeah, we've done like a ton of research and we know. And that would be still to the left, still in bold, but it also gets italicized. Okay, so it's bold and italics. And still that title case heading. So it's on a separate line. Same deal as your title. It's separate from your paragraphs. So that's probably about the max you'll get in undergraduate. If you needed to go further than that in your graduate life, your next even niche subject would be indented, bold, title case heading, and it ends in a period. And your paragraph is exactly the same line instead of being separated. And then same deal with level 5, right, which is a subsection of level 4. Same deal, you just put the whole thing in italics, okay? So again, you probably will not touch these in undergrad. You may not even touch number 3. number 1 and number 2 you can be most familiar with.
Hey, Ruby, when would I use APA as opposed to another citation style?
That's a great question, Caroline. APA really likes, well, the psychology department specifically, big fans of APA, right? So every psych paper you ever write, almost always in APA. APA is very specific to the social sciences. So probably if you take another social science class, almost anywhere, not just at Eastern, you will also use APA. Why APA? Because APA loves the social sciences. So their whole thing is designed around being particular for the social sciences. So here's everybody's favorite thing in the whole world, in-text citations. So use in-text citations within your paper to let somebody know, hey, this information is coming from somebody else, from somewhere else, not from me. In-text citations make sure that you're not plagiarizing somebody else's words, even if you don't mean to do that. These in-text citations let us know, hey, it's like a big neon flashing light. These words don't belong to me. These ideas don't belong to me. I'm poaching them from somebody else to use as support or as evidence. Okay? So APA and most citation styles have two different kinds. The first is parenthetical. It means that they're used in parentheses, right? So this parenthetical citation appears at the end of a quote or a paraphrase or a summary, right? And it's outside of the quotations, but inside the closing period. What do I mean by that? This right here, right? We have our nice little quote, end quotation marks, and then in parentheses, last name, comma, year, parentheses, period. The only time punctuation ever goes inside the quotation mark is if it's a question mark or an exclamation point. Otherwise, periods on the other side of the parentheses. So it would look like this down here at the bottom, right? Our nice quote from Moseley, contemporary architectural systems still use dynamic concepts, quotation marks around the quote, right? We know this specific phrase is coming from somebody else. Well, it's coming from Moseley. In the parentheses, last name, comma, year, comma, P.4, end parentheses, period. We'll talk about what you do when there's more than one author in a moment, but this is your jam. So if you have a paraphrase, right, or a summary, you won't have the quotation marks to indicate that this is coming from somebody else. Your in-text citation is doing that work for you, okay? So quotes are, it's easier to tell, right, if you're copying and pasting, but paraphrases and summaries are a little bit harder. So parenthetical, number 1. Second kind is narrative. And narrative in-text citations are structured within a sentence, describing the quote, the paraphrase, or the summary, okay? So it'd be something like Jones 2023 states, comma, nice long quote. So it looks like this. Moseley 2016 explains that contemporary architectural systems still use dynamic concepts, end quotation. And the page number goes at the end, okay? So that page number does not go at the beginning with the rest of the narrative citation. Same deal, punctuation still goes outside. What happens if you don't have a page number? Period goes inside. If you don't have a page number, let's say you have something like a digital, like a website or something that you're citing. There's not a page number on a website unless you printed it out. In that case, period, inside. So things to remember. The author's name is glued to the year, right? In both of those citations, we saw wherever the last name was, wherever that surname was, the year was right next to it, whether it was in parentheses or out of parentheses. So they are glued together. You cannot separate them. You cannot do a narrative citation and say Jones, blah, 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 and then put the year at the end, okay? That year always sits right next to that last name, okay? The page number, yeah, that can float off at the end of the sentence. But the year and the author stick right together, okay? So don't separate. This will always match what's on your references page, which I'll talk about in a moment. So if you have 2 authors specifically, or if you have 3 or more authors, this in-text citation will look a little different. I'm going to show you what that looks like. But same deal. No matter how many authors you have, author, year, glue. This next piece is about page numbers. So you're going to use P dot the page number, right? Like we just saw, if you've got 1 page number. If you're trying to, let's say you're summarizing, right? Like a chapter's worth of information. Your textbook has a lot of good stuff to say. You're trying to get it down to 3 sentences. Then you might use a series of page numbers. And that would be double P, period, and then the page numbers, right? So like 28 to 35, right? And you use that hyphen and you don't put a space between it. So they look like locked in. Now here's the other weird APA thing. Okay, APA's got a lot of weird things you'll learn. You don't include prefixes or suffixes like doctor or junior in somebody's name. Okay, so even if that says it on the reference page, you don't put it in your in-text citation. So here's where it gets even funkier. You got more than one author, okay? And a lot of APA papers that you're gonna cite, they've got more than one author, all right? If you have two authors, parenthetical and narrative look different. Your parenthetical citation, the one that sits inside parentheses, gets a nice little ampersand, okay? Jones, ampersand, Taylor, comma, 2024. So if it's inside parentheses, ampersand only, not the word and. If it's a narrative citation, outside parentheses, it gets the word and. And that's because when we're integrating something into a sentence, we like the word and not an ampersand. We want it to sound nice and professional, so we get that and in there. But the parenthetical citation, it saves time and space to put the ampersand. So same deal though, yours glued right next to it, right? So you don't have to put 2023 and 2023, this is the same source. So the year sits at the end. That's two authors. If you've got 3 or more authors, sometimes this can mean like 17, okay? This is why this looks like this. You put this ET space AL period. It stands for there's more. Sometimes you'll hear a professor or somebody say et al. This is the friend they're talking about, okay? ET space AL period, comma. And that is the same in your narrative. So it would still be Jones, ET, AL, period. So it's only your two authors that get funky when they're different. Everything else looks exactly the same.
Hey, so when I get to my reference page, do I put Jones et al?
No, that's a great question, Caroline. On your references page, every single author will be listed.
Even if I have 17?
Even if you have 17. This is what your references page is going to look like. At the very top, like a title, you'll put reference or references. Right? If you've got more than one, you want the S at the end. I recommend, this is why I put it on here. I would recommend do not hit enter 7 billion times, okay? When you upload it to Brightspace, it looks real funky. So you hit that last paragraph. If you click insert and then page break, it will always be on its own page. And then you never have to worry about formatting getting really weird. And it often does. You're going to alphabetize all your sources. So you start with years. If you have like some random, a year or number or something like that, like 5 fast ways, whatever, okay? Numbers go first, and then you go A to Z. And that is the first thing that's over here on the left. And it's the first one that's listed on your original source, not just whichever one is first in the alphabet in that whole list of 17 authors. And then there's this magical thing called a hanging indent. It's everyone's worst nightmare. Your hanging indent looks like this, okay? It's the opposite of a normal indentation. It's called a hanging indent because your first line hangs out on the left and the other lines are subsequently indented. Now, what you don't want to hit is hit tab on the next line. That'll get real funky real fast. What I recommend, this is what I tell all my students to do, till I'm blue in the face, put all your citations in and then highlight them all. And then there's an option for the computer to do a hanging indent for you. And it's the best thing ever. You don't have to do it yourself. Google Docs, Word, they all have an option for you to do a hanging indent. Here are the other weird things that I'm going to tell you about a references page. And this is the weirdest of them all. And it's the worst thing in the world to remember. The title has really weird capitalization. So we go last name, comma, first initial, right? That feels okay. We're kind of rocking with it, I understand. We do the year, cool. All right, we understand. Because those things are glued together in our paper, right? So they're glued together on the references page too. Now the title, she's weird. She's really special and she likes only her specific formatting. And that specific formatting is first word after a colon, which we don't have, and proper nouns are the only things that get capitalized in your title, right? So in this example, we can see in the title, right, the role of disciplinary expertise in shaping writing tutorials. Only the is capitalized because it's the first word. Yep. And your title is not italicized and it's not in quotation marks. It's just plain old font. Nice and normal. It makes up for all the weird capitalization stuff. Next thing that goes in a citation is usually your journal. Okay, your journal title gets normal capitalization. And it's in italics, right? So our writing center journal, written communication, italics, normal capitalization. Next thing you get is a volume. Okay, you don't put vol period, you don't put V, it's just a number. That is also in italics. So that's 33 or 20 here. Right next to it, glued side by side, because they're best friends, is your issue number. So it goes volume, parenthesis, issue, end parenthesis.
But then do I italicize the issue?
You do not. So your issue gets normal. No italics. Sometimes you don't even have an issue number. You will sometimes find that it just has a volume. So if you're looking at a citation and it just has that number, you know that it's just the volume. And then we have, this isn't a big long thing, so it's got an article number. This has page numbers, right? You know how in your in-text citations you put that P dot or that PP dot to indicate a page or a page range? You don't do that on your references page. It's just the numbers. So just 37 to 80. So if you're citing a chapter or a specific article, right? Same deal. Yep. So this is our nice long DOI. DOI stands for Digital Object Identifier. Okay? Most people will just say DOI and then they'll say, I don't know what that stands for. APA prefers now capital D, capital O, capital I, colon, with a bunch of numbers. But then students look at me blank face and they're like, I have no idea how to find that. And to be honest, most professors just want the link anyway. Your DOI is the permanent home of an article, forever and always. So even if it changes sites, right? Some other journal is hosting it, something or else, right? You found it on EBSCOhost and now it only exists on JSTOR. Weird things happen all the time. Your DOI makes sure that you never lose it. Okay, it's a permanent home for it, permanent number system. Yeah? But you can stare at me blank in the face and say, I don't know how to find that. And that's okay. All right, the link will do just fine.
I just went under this For Students tab, citing your sources, and I'm going to go to APA 7. So our colleague Robin did a fantastic job putting this together. We have a page on what do student and professional papers look like. We link out to APA, Purdue OWL, some really fantastic sites. You may also be wondering, well, what if I'm citing something that's like a book, a movie? We have examples for that as well. So if you're still on your laptop, I might want to bookmark this. We also have pages on in-text citations, so on and so forth. We have this online. You can access it whenever. Don't panic, it's here.
I will also tell you that the Writing Center has some guides about how to set up a references page and it'll walk you through with pictures, which is nice.